today we have a very special guest who is the co-founder of Milaap. His name is Mayukh Choudhury. Welcome to the show, first of all. And I could feel it coming from you. You know, I could feel it emanating from you. Tell us and the listeners what Milaap is a special organization. You guys have something really amazing going on. Can you give us a brief overview of what it is?
Yeah, sure. So today Milaap is India's foremost and leading crowdfunding platform, which is used by everyday individuals to raise funds for various causes, and we are majorly used for fundraising in medical emergencies and across board, in terms of critical healthcare treatments like for cancer cure, organ transplants. People, when they run short of money, there is no insurance, the savings have run dry, and they want to seek help from a greater social audience and their friends and family whom they know about. That's when Milaap becomes a platform for people to raise money, and for people, those who want to kind of donate and give for such causes, to come together. So that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And yeah, as a part of the connection in terms of building a crowdfunding platform for India, we do have a strong audience from the United States, where a lot of people want to give back to their friends and for causes at home. And yeah, so that's the in a very simple and a brief way of what Milaap does.
Yeah, I read 28% of your donor base is in the US, which is incredible.
Yep.
Do you attribute that to the amount of people in the past 10, 20, 30 years that have been moving here from India? Or do you see it happening in an organic way where people are just becoming more aware of these issues on a world scale, with social media and the internet bridging the world and making it smaller, in the past 10 years especially? How do you attribute the rise or the amount of activity that's coming from the US back to India?
So I think it's a combination of both. You summarized it pretty well. Uh, as an organic behavior, people who have moved out of the country and across the world, they do have a strong connect back home. It could be through a personal connection like friends or family, or it could even be the connect with their, the grassroots, the village or the school that they might have, studied in. So that behavioral, kind of pull, if I were to use the word, to do something for people back home is inherent in the audience, because a lot of them connected and also feel the fact that we are all lucky enough to be able to have the resources to come to wherever we have been able to come in life, and being able to come down to the US. Not everybody is able to have that level of resources. Not everybody may be lucky enough. I think there is a general sense of appreciation amongst the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why they have been very strong drivers in a lot of movements, back in India. So what we are, and with the entire connectivity increasing because of the entire world coming closer, the globalization and people moving more frequently, as you mentioned, I think we are just seeing an amplification of that inherent behavior.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've seen over the last 5-10 years the rise of what is become called crowdfunding, and we've in America we started seeing this 10, 15, 20 years ago when people were raising money for, say, movies or TV shows or records, albums that artists were putting out, to go more of an independent route. Let get the fans involved in developing projects that they're passionate about.
Right.
So now we've started to see this shift where we've seen people do I forget what the name of the platform is, but where they raise money for someone who's been in a car accident, who doesn't have money. We've seen this starting to happen. I think people always want to help. It's and you mentioned it's inherent, I believe, where people want to help and they want to do good things. But there's also the other part of it where, do I know where my money's going? Is it safe? So explain a little bit of that if you can.
Definitely, yes. So I think to the first, and I mean, extending the thought that you mentioned in the first part, people have always wanted to give. And what has happened over the last decade, be it in the United States or in India, this entire movement of technology which has digitized our behaviors. We always used to buy online. Today we are doing it over a phone. We have always walked out to the streets and hailed a cab. We are able to do it on a phone. I think what crowdfunding has done is bringing giving into the same paradigm.
Right.
It's a part of the technological shift. Now, coming down to the second part, which I believe is crucial to what we do at Milaap, and probably, in a connected world of mobile payments today, I would say the single most important reason why crowdfunding platforms need to, be out there is something like trust and verifications.
Yeah.
It's basically ensuring the donor audience. And when I'm talking of donor audience in the context of Milaap, it is they're spread across 130 countries, donating to causes back home. You know, way too much of a distance for them to kind of even understand where the money could be going to.
Right.
So it's extremely crucial for us to understand, who is the money being raised for. And I'll give you examples more from a healthcare context because that's what we do 90% of the times.
Mm-hmm.
Who is it raised for? Is that a real person? And then does that person actually have an ailment? And if that person has the ailment like cancer, what are the kind of prices that we are looking for? And what is it that being asked from the crowd? Now, these are all done over the years. We have been doing it. So we do it with a combination of technology and human support, and then supported by the data from hundreds of thousands of fundraisers that we have done, as well as super strong relationships that we have been able to build with hospitals back in India,
Mm-hmm.
so that if there is a patient, we today can over a phone call within minutes verify whether the patient is actually being treated in a hospital, what's the ballpark condition, and what kind of costs we are looking at. So I think that's forms what you asked me, uh, probably forms the core of something that we do, which we call as trust and verifications.
And I obviously very important. And I knew from reading about you guys that it was 100% legitimate. I just know, as consumers, as people, we think I don't always understand what I'm getting into. So many of us just click the box. Yeah, I agree. But there's so many things now that we have to be aware of. But with all the crowdfunding craze now, if you will, it is kind of new because we're talking cancer care, transplants, accidents, but there's also the other side of it, education, community causes and such. There's
Yeah,
no fee for this. Could you talk a little bit about how that works and how people can see and get involved in something like this?
sure. So as a platform here, we host all kinds of causes. Like people are raising money from healthcare to education to causes for the environment as well. It is just that from a pure behavior of people who are seeking funds and who are donating, healthcare forms an overwhelming part of what we end up doing.
Yes.
That said, anyone can raise money for education. We have some incredible stories in terms of fundraisers that have been hosted on Milaap, and maybe we can I can take you through one of those stories
I would
later
love to.
on
Yeah,
as
yeah.
we
Maybe
speak.
before we get off, because that's one of my favorite parts is hearing experience, something that you could
Yeah,
tell
we are
us.
all about stories,
Oh, I'm
yes.
sure. Yeah. So go ahead. We'll get back to that.
And yeah, it's true that we do not charge any fees as a platform. I think though that's something we have taken as an inspiration from the overall global movement that we saw in terms of asking the question, if we are providing a valuable service to the society as such, for those who are fundraising and those who are donating, could we put ourselves to test by saying, uh, let's not charge fees and let's just see if people are willing to voluntarily support us. So that's when I think early 2020 or middle of 2020, in the middle of COVID, trying a lot of experiments. One of the experiments we tried was, what if we just waive off the fees and see how people react and whether they are willing to support Milaap by tips.
Right.
Now, it was incredibly difficult a decision, and a lot of differences within the team, because while in the United States tipping is a part of the culture,
Yeah.
it just is not that in India. So a lot of doubts, a lot of questions came in. Thankfully, the team came together and said, let's go ahead and see how it works. And yeah, I think a 3-month experiment today has become the model that has sustained the company and probably in its most thriving phases in the last 4 years.
By the way, I'm here with Mayukh, who's the co-founder of Milaap, raising funds online for medical emergencies, social causes. Again, it's India's most trusted crowdfunding platform, with a big part coming from here in America. There are ways to get involved. Where would people find information about this? Where would they decide, okay, I want to get involved in some way?
So in terms of the way people get involved with Milaap is quite an organic way as we have seen it. Like we have over 300,000 donors from the United States.
Wow.
A lot of them who are donating on a repeated basis. And the way they would have connected with the platform, in all likelihood, is when they would have heard about the fundraising cause for somebody back home,
Right.
in terms of someone raising money. It could be an ex-colleague, it could be a friend. There have been instances where students have come together to raise money for their teacher uh, uh, and supporting medical treatment. So that's how, through their social network, in a very organic way, they come to know about Milaap, where the person you are fundraising for becomes the reason, and Milaap is just an enabler. And that's the role we want to play. And once people like the platform, once people like the fact that we are taking care of the trust and verifications, we are very particular about providing updates to donors on what happened, regular updates in terms of how the progress has been. I think a lot of them like it, and they then continue to keep getting back to the platform and donating, and even donating to strangers. So that's what we are seeing today after almost a decade of being in the crowdfunding space. Actually, 14 years to be more precise.
On behalf of everybody, I have to say we thank people like you. We're grateful for people like you. If it's not for someone who's forward thinking and entrepreneurial, taking the lead on these things, God knows where we would be in our trek towards perfection and humanity. You also co-founded Get Copay Help. So you've been involved in a lot of things that affect the average person. These aren't things that are like, oh, that's not my world. These are things that affect me, you, our neighbors, our families. We have a couple of minutes left. If you could share a story, like we mentioned earlier, something that really kind of hits you, that makes you want to continue to do this.
Great. I'll try to summarize it in 2 minutes. Let me see how I can do this. So, and this is a story of a fundraiser. Probably back in 21 or 22, we raised money for supporting the family of a veteran in India, and huge public support. The fundraiser ended up raising a lot more than what we intended to, and then the family decided that we would reserve the funds for some of the other causes. Now, at that point of time, one of the causes that was supported, was for uh, training a kid who was a special child, and was identified as a talent in one of the remotest of villages in India. And yeah, it happens all the time. When a fundraiser has excess money, we try to or the families come forward and say, I want to help others who are in a similar situation. Fast forward it to today, that special child, incredibly talented sports person, ended up winning an Olympic medal for the country.
Really?
So, this is what I believe. You wake up, you perform some tasks earnestly every day, and you get some moments to reflect.
Yeah.
We have seen people come out of extremely difficult medical conditions and then leading a normal life. And then, yeah, when you're around for 14 years, once in a while, you get to hear that you have been able to play that little 2 cents role in the journey of an Olympian. So, yeah, that's an honor we take.
I'll tell you, a 14-year period of time, knowing what you're doing is a long time. And the way the world is now, it feels like 14 years is like a century, What you're doing is unbelievable, Mayukh. I'm such an honor to speak to you. Why don't you tell us how people can find out more and get in touch, or anything you want to give to our listeners?
So, yeah, I think a lot of people these days kind of know about Milaap. So they are visiting the website, milaap.org, to see if there are causes that resonate with them to donate back to India. We are now a registered, 501c3, and we are able to bring more seamlessness for donations, like people can donate via their donor advised funds. We've made it extremely simple for people to donate as well as for their employers to match the donations, which can go back to causes in India. And yeah, I think that's the support we are looking forward to from the community in terms of, and we want to be the platform where people think of giving to India in any form. Probably Milaap can play a little role, and you and I can get some of the inspiring stories to be happy about.
I really appreciate your time, man. This was for me. It's a great learning experience, just finding out more about Milaap and yourself. So thank you for being here.